Hello and welcome to, hard to believe, but episode 4 of Bullpen Sessions already. And we have run through a lot of guests already, but we have our buddy Michael Simpson, who is my co host on the Atlanta 9521 Atlanta Baseball Podcast. Michael is a huge baseball historian. And so tonight we are going to talk about baseball history, Michael, and kind of dig into the origination of the game that we all love. And pretty interesting story, man. I'm glad you put this stuff together and welcome aboard and welcome to Bullpen Sessions.
Thank you. Yeah, people do not adjust your sets. This is not a 9521 episode. I
It is
promise.
not. No, we're trying our best as we are live on several different channels now, as we are now part of the Rounding Third. I like to call it the Rounding Third Empire. I think it's officially the Rounding Third Media Network, but I like the Rounding Third Empire. It sounds cool. And we are trying our best as Braves fans, Michael, not to watch the Braves Dodgers score as we do this history lesson on baseball. See, I almost said Braves baseball, but this is just baseball in general.
Yeah, just
And
baseball.
yeah, so looking forward. This is a lot of good information. There's a lot of things here I had no idea about until you sent this info to me and we started putting this episode together. So really fascinated by a lot of the things we're going to talk about. And look, it's the game we all love, and it's not surprising to me. And I mentioned this to you off the air, quote unquote, but that humans figured out that it might be fun to like hit something round with a stick, right? It just feels like some kind of natural progression for the human race, like to pick up a stick, and probably started with like hitting a rock in the caveman days or something like that. But it kind of progressed from there. And we're going to talk about that. And it's a super interesting story. And look, the mythology around the start of baseball, Abner Doubleday and the start of baseball in 1839, all that, everybody knows that story. But Michael, that's really not the true story of how baseball began. So kind of give us the overview of the early kind of similar games that developed and how those kind of, we'll get into more details, but what were the similar things that started to develop like as early as I believe you've got in here like 1400s?
The 1400s. It was a bad. It was a paddle or a stick basically. It was the game was called Stool Ball, but it's hard to. I'm trying to wrap my head around it myself. So they would throw a ball, whether it was an actual ball. I have no idea what exactly they used. Could have been a rock. Could have been like an I don't know, anything.
Could have been a bull testicle. I mean, we don't know. Like they had to use whatever they had, right? I mean,
exactly.
yeah.
But they decided that they would throw it towards a stool. I mean, I'm guessing they probably finished milking the cows or something like that. Flipped their stool over, and
they used their testicle, and then they had a stool, and it just all worked out. It was great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they would throw it at it, and then someone would, maybe they were trying to hit it or whatever, get it in the hole or something like that, in between the legs, or they eventually someone decided, well, let me see if I can defend it, and hit it with either my hand or a stick or a paddle of some sort.
Yeah.
But they started doing that, and then from there it went to the point, well, you have a stool tool, we'll try and do it back and forth, and then running between the tools became a thing. So you can see where somewhat of whether it's a sport or whatever, just a pastime, to just be able to sit there and play with a ball and a stick and run between stuff. It kind of sounds a little bit archaic, but kind of sounds a little bit like what we have grown to love, baseball.
Yeah. So it even kind of, I'm reading the notes here. So it even kind of shifted to, they had multiple bases or quote unquote posts that runners would circle before going quote unquote home. Right. So even in these early days, you're starting to see that similarity to the game that we know today.
Exactly. I mean, there was a bunch of different games when it came to it, but it's you either go to a post or you go to a base of some kind and keep going around. You go back to the original one that you were defending or home.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And so, when do we kind of see the first time, Michael, that the word or the term baseball is actually used?
So in 1744, there was a children's book called A Little Pretty Pocketbook.
I have that book. I got that one. I got that
Oh,
one.
okay. That,
Yeah.
that one's it's back on the shelf right behind you there.
It is. Yeah. You can't see it right now, but it's definitely back there for sure.
Okay. So they had there was a little poem in there and it mentioned baseball. I don't have it written down, but like they hit the ball and ran home. It was a mention of bases and balls in it. So there's a an actual like mention of a sport that kind of sounded like baseball.
So that kind of tells us right there, because this is like 100 years before Abner Doubleday, right? So that kind of tells us right there that the game had already started to become what we know as baseball before Abner Doubleday was even in the picture, correct?
Correct. Yeah, he was not even born yet. He was not twinkle in his dad's bull testicle.
Right. Right. So so let's talk about, as this game now it makes its way to the colonies, right, to the American colonies. Let's talk about kind of that evolution as it came to the colonies. And I would imagine, Mike, as it did that, you're going to get different versions of the game in different places, right? It's not one standardized game at this point for sure. So talk a little bit about that evolution as it came over to the American colonies.
Yeah, there was about the 1820s that they started playing what was called town ball, and each area had their own kind of game. There was two that kind of grew up out of it, and were played the most from what we can see. One of it being the Massachusetts game, which is it's kind of similar, but there's definitely differences between what we're used to. And the other one was the New York game, and that tended to be a lot closer to what we're used to. The Massachusetts game had 5 bases. There was 4 posts and then an area in between what I guess we would call first and home, and that would be where you'd hit from. So you'd have to hit all 4 of those and get back to the 5th one. But yeah, that's not what we're used to, so it's kind of odd sounding to us.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. I want to talk a little more about town ball because there's some fascinating things here. The one of them that I really like, because we used to do this in elementary school, because you know how kids are. You'll find any excuse to throw something at somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm going back. I'm looking at these notes. So town ball, it says, was a broad category rather than one fixed rule set. So we kind of talked about that. The number of bases, the players, the number of outs, even how outs were made. And here's the part that I really like and find fascinating. There was one memorable rule that was called soaking or plugging, which was throwing the ball at a runner at them to put them out. Now, again, we don't know exactly what they were using for a ball here, but I would imagine, being this far back, it wasn't anything super soft. No. So this probably was not something you probably didn't want to get plugged. And there's a lot of dangerous connotations with that, but we're a family-oriented show, so we'll keep it there. But you know, this is pretty funny to me, because I'm picturing these guys in the 1700s, late 1700s, early 1800s, you know, playing this game where they're just trying to peg each other with a hard round object, and it's really funny to me, Mike, to think about that.
Yeah, that was one of the rules that was prevalent at the time, and yet they would. Could you imagine it now, like Ozzy trying to turn a double play and drilling the guy?
I would love it. Manny Machado runs by and Ozzy just pegs him in the back of the head. I love it.
It'd be great now, but I mean, there might be a few more injuries at this point. If there was
a few more injuries, and I would imagine a good number of brawls. Yeah, right? This is probably where the original baseball, you know, run on the field and attack each other was born, like a good brawl, right? Because you pegged the wrong guy or the wrong guy in the wrong spot. I mean, I would imagine there were no helmets back then, right? There were no arm pads, there were no cups, so you could get hit anywhere at any time. And Yeah, that's probably not the ideal situation, but it is kind of funny to think about today's game. And if it was that way, I can only imagine how wild some of these early games were. It would be great to go back and just watch that as an observer at this point. I can only imagine the fights that would break out. Probably had a lot of town ball games that turned into boxing matches. That's my guess.
This is true, yeah. And uh, before I want to say the 1840s, it was more of a children's game, teenager kind of thing. It wasn't played by men, so yeah, there were probably a lot of brawls at the time, because I mean, kids will be kids, and if you're chucking a ball at me, and it hurt, I'm going after you.
Let's be honest, Michael. If it was adults, you're probably going to have a lot of adult guys don't take that very well either, right? So the Massachusetts game. So we're going to get into the two games that really started to separate themselves and would eventually lead to the game that we know today, or at least one of them kind of became the dominant one. But let's talk about the Massachusetts game a little more. So this was popular in New England, shocker, Massachusetts, right? Where you are at. Right. Yep. So you're probably not far from some of the sites where some of these original contests were played out. They retained a lot of the old town ball features, including kind of varied rules. You could have bigger teams, larger teams, distances between the bases. You still had what they called the soaking or the plugging, where you're throwing the ball at people.
Correct.
And in 1858, that says it even got its own standardized rule book, which I would imagine is kind of a huge first step, right? It's kind of like the Magna Carta for democracy. So they finally start to standardize this thing with the Massachusetts game. So still kind of the Wild Wild West, but at least they had some rules, which was a huge step forward, right?
Correct. Yeah, 1858, the Massachusetts game. They had a meeting in Dedham, Massachusetts. Shocking that it's in Massachusetts. But there was about, I want to say, 15 teams that met and sent. I think it was 2 representatives from each team, but they went and they decided on the rules of the Massachusetts game. I had a list of the teams. I'm trying to see if I can pull it up. There was the closest one to me would have been Medway, which is about 25 minutes from my house, which I see that and I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool. I mean, because it's a small town. It's not just like not like Boston. It's not like Worcester, which is like the second biggest city in Massachusetts. It's a small little town.
Well, it's funny because, as you know, recently I went to Boston to visit my son, and we did the Freedom Trail, and we saw all the old stuff that's there, the Revolutionary War era stuff. And to think about these folks back then, they needed entertainment too. I think we think about them as working all the time and, farming and all those things, but they needed entertainment too. And this was probably a great way for the guys to just be like, of course, the poor women were in the kitchen, I'm sure, but the guys were out having fun, man. They needed an outlet. They needed something to do besides just farming all the time and working hard. And, town ball provided that for them before, they didn't have flat screen TVs back then, Mike. They didn't have internet. So bless their hearts, they had no football, they had no baseball, but they were getting there. So the Massachusetts game still retained a lot of those old town ball features. So let's get into the New York version of the game. Developed around, shocker here, New York City. That's why it probably got that name, right?
Correct.
Can you speak to why it wasn't obvious at this time, why, which version would win out at this point? Like, was it just because they were separated by so much? I mean, back then, from Boston to New York was a long way. Now it's a quick trip for us, but back then that was a decent trip. So was it just geography, or was there more to it, like not really understanding which one of these was going to win out in the end?
Yeah, it was the fact that they were separated by some distance. It was geography for the most part. Yeah, like you said, now, I mean, I could drive to New York City in 2 hours, but back then, from Boston to New York City was probably I would say at least half a day, if not more, of a trip by
Depends
horse.
On the horse. Depends on the
Exactly.
horse, right? Yeah, if you got a good horse, maybe half a day. Yeah. So I'm looking at these notes. So the Knickerbockers come along, the Knickerbocker Baseball Club in 1845. They wrote 20 rules. And you say modern research credits William R. Wheaton and William H. Tucker with the key work on this. So Wheaton had already helped eliminate soaking. So you could no longer throw at players, which I think was a good, as entertaining as that might be, I think that was a good progression to not be able to throw hard objects at other people unless you're at war, right? And then they also set the diamond layout, which is huge, and the 3 outs per side, foul territory. These are things that we all recognize, and this is still, mid 1800s, right, Mike?
Correct. Yeah, 1845 is when they sat down and they wrote out some rules. I mean, a lot of the stuff was being used at the time, and for the most part, soaking was out of the game in the New York game, but there was nothing official, and they'd have teams playing against each other, and they would just kind of use a lot of the same rules, but they could pick whatever we want to use soaking, or we don't, or we want 5 bases as opposed to 4 or something like that. So they were kind of liberal with what exactly was going on with the rules. And in 1845, the Knickerbocker sat down and said, all right, these are the ones that we're going to play by all the time, flat out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And yes, William Wheaton and William Tucker both they were put into the club's rule committee. Wheaton had played for the Gotham Baseball Club going back to like 1837, and that's where he kind of got rid of the soaking rule with them. And the Gothams were a big team back then before the Knickerbockers that played, and that's more than likely that's the team that they played in the infamous first ever baseball game, which was in 1846, I believe.
Is this the one at Elysian Fields?
At the Elysian Fields, yeah.
Yeah, so the Knickerbockers actually lost that game 23-1. So how did they lose their first like they were supposed to be the guys who kind of set the tone here, right? That's kind of funny. But yeah, it's funny because I would love to do even more research. How did they come to which it kind of seems like common sense in a way, but how did they come to the conclusion to do a diamond shape, right? I mean, I don't know how else you kind of could have done. It'd be weird if they did like a Z shape, right? But it's funny that they agreed on that, and we just kind of take all that stuff for granted now. We don't even think about that kind of stuff, like how the baseball diamond originated and foul territory and how many outs you make. They used to call runs? They called them aces, and they used to play to instead of innings, they used to play to 21 aces, right? So 13 to 21. So you can see a lot of similarities, obviously, in the game we know today, but also probably a very different game. If we were watching this, if we could travel back in time, we would probably recognize it as the precursor to baseball, but it will also be a very different experience than what we experience today.
Yeah, correct. I mean, yes, we would see the diamond and go, okay, that's probably baseball. We would look at why is there no mound? Because there was a pitcher's box, and it was only 50 feet from the plate. Not only that, but they were also throwing underhand. There was no overhand throwing, and you couldn't go above your hip. It would have to be, you'd be lofting it. You weren't looked at like you were trying to get the person out. You were trying to get them to hit the ball.
Right.
Like that was the whole point. There was no.
You wanted your defense to make the play. Is that kind of what we were talking about there?
Correct.
So like Bryce Elder's pitching, right?
He's fine to, he's trying to make contact. Exactly.
Yeah. Or Greg Maddux even. Yeah. So I want to give some credit here.
He was really good at getting them to make contact, but get out. Elder's not so much good at that.
Right. Well, Maddux would have been great back in the 1800s for sure.
There you go.
So let's make sure we give credit where it's due. Daniel Doc Adams, he joined the club in 1845 and refined some of these rules. He created, this is the one I want to talk about, he created the shortstop position, and it says it was created as a relay position. So I assume that was kind of a relay between the outfield and the infield to get the ball in. And the shortstop position, of course, now is one of the most, if not the most important infield position. So that's interesting that somebody finally figured out that, hey, maybe we need to put a guy here between the outfield and the infield to relay that ball home. And this was, again, I just want to give credit to old Daniel Doc Adams, who may be looking on from wherever he's at right now and watching our podcast. Who knows? So I just want to make sure that he gets credit for the shortstop position because, again, that's a huge position. Without the shortstop position, Michael, we would not have Ozzie Smith. and that would be a tragedy.
Correct. We wouldn't have Ozzie Smith. We wouldn't have Cal Ripken, although he did go to third. But yes, correct. Without Doc, we would not have had the shortstop position. That was mostly because there was no outfield fence. You hit the ball no matter where, you're running after it, and I don't think they were going to have the arms to get it in from 700 feet away. So someone had to go out there, and he decided, well, maybe we should make a position. It probably was played more of like a short field. I mean, I've played softball. I've been men's league softball, and sometimes you would play, you play like a short fielder in front of the center fielder if there was a big field. So it probably was more like that. Then eventually migrated over towards the third baseman. Yes, Nick, we wouldn't have had Rafael Belliard either. You are correct.
Rafael Belliard. Bobby Witt Jr., right? We got it, okay, so let's talk about 1857. This was a big year for baseball, or whatever we're calling it at this point. So the New York area clubs that we talked about, they formed the National Association of Baseball Players. So I guess at this point we are calling it baseball.
Yep,
and they really standardized some key stuff here. They standardized the 9 innings. I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but God bless them, it just seems right. 9 innings, 9 players per side. They standardize that, so that's huge. 3 outs and a diamond field. I mean, that right there is pretty much the basics of baseball. And so really by 1857, Michael, it's starting to take shape as the game that we know.
And the 90-foot base pass also.
Yes.
Yep, that was another one. And if I've heard so many times, well, if you shorten it to 85 feet, then batting average would go through the roof. So somehow they just knew it was perfect at 90 feet.
Yeah. Good for them. It was heavenly ordained, Michael. Yeah. It was meant to be. 9 innings, 9 players per side, 90 feet. It all makes sense. It couldn't have been any other way, right?
Correct.
So the game's starting to really take shape. And I want to stop here for a minute and just appreciate the fact that as the country grew up, baseball grew with it. Right? Yeah. They are intertwined. And I think a lot of times we think, well, baseball started about 100 years after the country. But no, this really was a part of American culture from the beginning when you look at how this started in the colonies and kind of progressed. And I think it's one reason that despite you can talk about TV ratings, you can talk about popularity, baseball still holds a place in American culture that is unlike any other sport. And I think this is why, because this game grew up with America as both of them grew, and they're going to go through a major growing pain that we're going to get to here in a minute that affected the country in a large way, of course, and also affected the spread of the game. But, up until this point, tying those two things together, we celebrate America, we celebrate baseball, and they just kind of go together. I think it's why people get so, baseball is celebrated so much at Memorial Day and 4th of July, and we love the Field of Dreams, and it just all kind of goes together. And this is a great example of why, because the culture of America and the culture of baseball they grew up together like little siblings.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And to second that, there was, like you said, that they grew up together. So the war ends in 1781. Treaty of Paris officially ends the Revolutionary War in 1783. And then 8 years later, in the town of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, it's a city now, but it's not big. Trust me, for someone who lives in Massachusetts, it's not a big city.
Yeah.
They passed a bylaw to protect the windows at the meeting house because people were playing all kinds of sports, but it was they prohibited wicket, cricket, baseball, bat ball, football, cats, fives, and any games played with with any kind of balls. They were prohibited to be within 80 yards of the meeting house because it was brand new and they didn't want to have to pay for the windows.
Right.
So
right. Smart. That's smart. Yeah.
Exactly. So 8 years after we signed the Treaty of Paris to become our own country, there's baseball being played.
Yeah.
Given it's not what we're used to, like, I know we're backtracking a little bit here, but it encapsulates what you were saying. We grew up together. This is only 8 years after that we became a country. So clearly we're kind of intertwined.
Yeah, and even though the origination of the game may have come from overseas, and I know there's also, and we didn't we didn't get into this. I don't know if you did any research here. We don't have to get it deep, but I know that the Brits have always said that we kind of stole baseball from a game they had called Rounders. I don't know if you've ever done any research on Rounders, but regardless, we took this game and made it our own, and it had its own special American flair to it. And I don't care about even if we did steal it, we changed it to the point where, because look, people say baseball and cricket are very similar. You can watch a cricket game, and I see the quote unquote similarities, but it stops pretty soon. Like American baseball is its own thing, and it's very unique. And I think it's the reason why, again, it's so revered even till today. So, regardless of how it originated, we took it and made it our own. And it's still, to me, regardless, again, of TV ratings or whatever you want to look at, is the American pastime, regardless.
Yeah, and I've known a little bit of research when it comes to rounders too. No, I didn't do it for this, but I do know, like for example, when it comes to running the bases, they didn't stop at home. They would continue to run and run and run, like until, so you could score 3 runs if the ball got too far away. You'd be able, if you ran around 3 times, you would run, you'd score 3 runs.
Hence the name Rounders, I guess. Yeah.
Correct.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But there was a lot of it. I don't think it was a diamond per se or officially a diamond, but something to that effect. And same thing, hitting a ball with a bat. It's a lot of them were the same. Rounders is it's a cousin, I'd probably say, of baseball. It's not exactly, but it definitely is. It's close.
Well, and that goes back to the fact that I think, you could probably go back to, 500 BC, Mike, and find some humans in a field somewhere. They found a rock and a stick and are trying to hit, like it just feels like it makes sense. So I think it's kind of weird to try to take credit for anyone. We took something that everybody has done since human civilization, and we just made it our own. And so that leads us into one of the most influential moments and periods in American history that also helped spread the game. Mike, you want to talk a little bit about how the Civil War influenced the spread of what would become our national pastime?
Well, you'd have soldiers from different cities and different areas and different states playing all kinds of town ball. Well, the one that they ended up playing a lot of was the New York game. It ended up being that ended up being the one that they played more often than anything else, and that by going from camp to camp and going through other, through the states as we were fighting, on off times, not actual battles, you'd have them, having fun playing the game, and they would, as they went around to either before the battles or whatever, they would be bringing it to other parts of the country, and that ended up being the one that ends up kind of spreading out and unfortunately for my home state kind of ends up essentially eliminating the chances of the Massachusetts game becoming big.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of and real quick, I want to put Nick's comment up here. You just throw a wicked hod at the guys to get them out in Massachusetts. I hope I did that justice. It's hard to do that from a southern
You didn't.
Sorry.
Wicked hod.
Apologies to the guys who commented earlier. I'm still getting used to seeing comments. So appreciate the folks who commented earlier. We'll get used to that. So, yeah, I mean, look, a lot of obviously tragedy came out of the Civil War. A lot of people sacrificing their lives for that. But if we're going to pull some positive out of that, sports-wise, it did spread baseball and really it really started us down the road of it becoming the American pastime and kind of that standardized version that we all know, and led really right after that, Mike, into the formations of leagues and getting us together till we get to the point of, leading up to the National League, which was the original, of course, and then even we're creeping closer to the 1900s where the baseball that we kind of know and love really was, familiar to us. So, after the war, you started to see more clubs, probably more parks that were being designated for this. I don't know if people were building ballparks yet. That's something I guess we'd have to do a little research on. Do you know anything about that? Okay, nobody was building baseball parks yet, but
no, they weren't. It was more played on just an open field. They would have bases, usually just probably sacks of seeds or whatever, just like to use as a base. But it was played for the most part like that. Um, I've been to a vintage baseball game before. I saw one in Warwick, Rhode Island, where they played by 1864 rules, and yeah, it's just an open field. They and so some of the stuff you see in that is insane. I know one of our one of our people that's in the Rounding Third Media Network is Baseball History Dork. He actually has played in a game, a vintage baseball game. That is played. There are no gloves at all. If it bounces once and you catch it, it's an out. There's a bunch of different that's how I learned about the whole that they threw everything underhand. They was 50 yards, 50 feet from the plate. It's definitely a lot different from what we're used to. But this is what gained all the popularity during the Civil War, and this is they loved it. And that's what spread. So that's good.
When you were researching this, Mike, do we know how do we have the information we do have from pre-civil? I mean, I know during the Civil War, a lot of soldiers were keeping journals, so we probably get a lot of info there. But pre-Civil War, do we know kind of how we have this information about how the game evolved? Was it word of mouth? Were there written records? How do we kind of know what was happening during that time?
Well, the Knickerbocker, they wrote out. When I say they made up the rules, they wrote them out. There is a copy, I believe, in the Baseball Hall of Fame. If it's not there, it's in the Library of Congress. It's one of the two. They have the actual written out rules from the Knickerbockers from 1845.
Very cool.
A lot of them, there's a lot of really weird ones. I'll have to research that a little bit more and bring it on next time, even though it'd be kind of out of sync. Still, it would be nice to learn about it.
Yeah, it's just I guess humans have been writing for a long time, so I'm sure there's written records. It's just funny to think about how do we know all this stuff. I'm sure there's some Dead Sea Scrolls for baseball. There's probably some records out there that we have. So that leads us really into probably the first name that a lot of casual baseball fans or even good baseball fans that pay attention would recognize, and that's the Cincinnati Red Stockings. In 1869 became the first openly professional baseball team. So kind of makes it sound like they came out as a professional baseball team. But this was 2 years before the first professional league was formed. So, in the lore of baseball, the Red Stockings are kind of the team that people would say, if you ask the average baseball fan, what was the first baseball team? A lot of them would probably say the Cincinnati Red Stockings. And technically, in some ways, they wouldn't be wrong. How important, Michael, do you think the Red Stockings were to that next step in the progression of baseball going forward?
It depends on how you look at it, because if you look at it from the other teams that were playing around the time, who were just amateurs and were doing it for the fun, they hated the fact that the Red Stockings were around, because they were like, oh, so now we're going to pay people? I thought this was just a gentleman's game and we played for fun. So you guys are just going to, pay them and try and win every single game. So they hated it.
Yeah.
But yes, in 1869, since
they were the Dodgers of 1869. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. They were the Los Angeles Dodgers of 1869.
We're just going to pay everybody. We're going to get all the best players at the Red Stockings. Yeah.
That's basically kind of what the Dodgers are doing, right?
Yeah. That's, it's 100 years before, 150 years before. I may be wrong about this. I didn't research this. It just hit me. Are the Red Stockings the team that went 32-0 or something, their first season, undefeated? Or
I believe it was either 70 or 71-0. Correct. Yes. And in 1869, they finished the season undefeated. They beat everyone. They continued playing into 1870 and then finally lost their first game. And then all of a sudden they kind of fell out of favor because they were no longer undefeated. So they kind of disbanded from there.
You can't go undefeated. Why even play, right?
Exactly.
At least they lived up to the hype, unlike our Knickerbockers earlier, right? At least the Red Stockings lived up to the hype. No, I remember that. If you go to, I highly recommend this. Anybody that goes to Cincinnati, if you're a baseball fan, go to Great American Ballpark. They have an incredible Reds museum there, a Reds Hall of Fame, but it really tells the story of baseball there. And there's a section there that talks about I got all my Braves fans are messaging me. If you're hearing the dings in the background, the Braves took the lead here. There's an incredible section there about those Red Stockings and the history of baseball. That's just, if you're a baseball fan and you haven't been to Cincinnati, if for no other reason, go check out the museum. It's well worth the time, well worth the effort. So Mike, we've talked about the progression here. We've gotten up to the Civil War and just after, and we're starting to get to that point now where we kind of all recognize things. There's even stats for this upcoming period of time in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. You can actually go on Baseball Reference and pull some of these stats. They're not super comprehensive. There's a lot of data missing there, but we do have some stats from that era, and we start to talk about players from that era as we lead into, of course, the modern 20th century baseball. So we're going to take this journey together. I assume, Michael, you're going to come back. We're kind of doing this. If you just joined us on Bullpen Sessions, we have this is our 5th episode, and what we're doing is really having each week a guest that right now is associated with our Rounding Third family here, the Rounding Third Media Network, from Clearing the Bases, and then, of course, Michael here from the 9521 Atlanta Baseball Podcast that we co-host. And hopefully we'll have other guests on as we progress. But so, Michael, you'll come back around in a few weeks, and we'll do round 2, and I guess we'll pick up where we left off, right?
Yeah, I'll start right around 1870 and keep going from there. At least we'll give you 1870 1900, give you a good chunk, but that's a lot of information in there. So that's it might sound like 30 years isn't that much, but there's plenty of information there.
I mean, you think about the last 30 years of baseball. There's a lot of data there, a lot of data, a lot of stories, right? So yeah, we can take our time with it, and look, we got plenty of time. We may need to fill in some time next season, actually. So if we want to carry this thing even further,
chance.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely, yeah. So Michael, thank you so much for putting this together, man. This is a lot of great info. It's really cool to kind of, think about things we don't really think about that much when it comes to the history of the game.
Yeah, no, I've loved bringing it out and letting people learn about this kind of stuff. It's been a passion of mine. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Again, we have we're super excited to now be a part of the Rounding Third Media Network going forward. We're going to be live as much as we can on Tuesday nights at this time, 9 Eastern-ish, maybe 9:15-ish, but 9 Eastern generally. And next week we'll see what happens. We're also looking to bring back, my wife and I, the He Said, She Said podcast. We may throw that on Tuesday nights as well, so keep an eye out for that. And watch the Rounding Third Media Network every night. We've got a show going all the time. We've got, of course, the original Rounding Third shows. We've got the NYMLB Talk guys going now that are part of the Empire here at Rounding Third. So just incredible fan-driven baseball content for you guys to consume every night of the week. And so, Michael, thank you again. I guess I will see you again on, well, actually, I'm going to miss next Monday night on our Braves podcast, but you're going to have Mark Fredrickson join us for a third time to tell some Brave stories, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I contacted Mark today, and he says he's game. So awesome. We'll talk to him next week.
Awesome. So tune in next Monday night for the 9521 Atlanta Baseball Podcast, and we'll be back with another episode of Bullpen Sessions. And in the meantime, folks, we appreciate you, and we'll see you at the ballpark.